Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump is reportedly pushing aid for a meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un as soon as this fall, during his next trip to Asia for an APEC meeting in China in November. This comes after he recently ordered the Pentagon to scale back joint military drills with South Korea. And the U.S. leader also says there are no talks or conversations taking place or scheduled with Iran. Meanwhile, as the standoff over the Strait of Hormuz continues, Tehran says the waterway will remain closed until the U.S. meets conditions outlined in the interim agreement reached in June. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to visit South Korea later today for the first time in 5 years. He is set to meet with President Lee Jae-myung and Foreign Minister Cho Hyun to discuss bilateral issues as well as broader regional matters. U.S. President Donald Trump is reportedly pushing aides to arrange a meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un as early as this November, when he's scheduled to be in Asia for an APEC meeting in China. Now, the development comes as South Korea and the United States move to scale back their joint military exercises, with discussions underway over a possible early end to the drills. Our Lee Ji-yeon reports.
The Wall Street Journal, citing official sources, said Tuesday that U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing for a meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un as soon as this fall, with the aim of convincing Kim to abandon his country's nuclear weapons program. According to the report, no official planning has begun, but Trump has privately discussed arranging an in-person meeting with Kim, possible in November at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation in Shenzhen, China. Trump's push for a fall meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un comes as the U.S. and South Korea move to scale back their joint military drills. The Ulti Freedom Shield exercise, originally scheduled to run through August 27, could be significantly scaled back and end as early as this week. The changes come after President Trump instructed the Pentagon on Sunday to substantially reduce the joint military exercises with South Korea. On the second day of the exercise, General Xavier Brunson visited the Ministry of National Defense in Seoul, where he met with Defense Minister An Gyu-baek. A total of 14 joint field training exercises had been planned for this year, but those drills are now expected to be held separately or conducted solely in South Korean forces. The first phase of the Ulti Freedom Shield exercise, currently underway and focused on defensive operations, was scheduled to run through August 21st. Military authorities are reportedly moving toward not conducting the second phase as planned. The second phase, focusing on counteroffensive operations, was set to run from August 23rd through 27 and has routinely drawn condemnation from North Korea, which has portrayed it as a rehearsal for an invasion of the North. The development comes amid broader questions over Washington's military commitment to its allies. According to Axios, South Korea is the latest U.S. ally to face pressure from President Trump as his administration takes a more transactional approach to security partnerships. Lee Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korea is threatening stronger countermeasures in response to the ongoing South Korea-U.S. Ulti Freedom Shield military exercise. In a commentary carried Wednesday by the state-run Korean Central News Agency, Pyongyang said the drills are becoming increasingly dangerous and warned that it will respond to what it calls evolving military threats with new and evolved strength. The KCNA also criticized the participation of the United Nations Command, claiming it signals an expansion of the command's combat role. The statement did not mention U.S. President Donald Trump's recent directive to scale back joint exercises with South Korea, or ongoing discussions between Seoul and Washington on reducing the drills. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung is set to meet China's top diplomat, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, at the Blue House on Thursday during Wang's two-day official visit to Seoul. On their agenda is the direction of Korea-China ties as well as broader regional matters. National Security Advisor Ri Seong-nak will also hold talks with Wang, who concurrently heads the Chinese Communist Party's Central Foreign Affairs Office. On Wednesday, Wang will meet Foreign Minister Cho Hyun for talks and an official dinner covering bilateral ties, the Korean Peninsula, and regional and global issues. It will be Wang's first visit to Korea in almost 5 years. The Foreign Ministry says the visit will review progress in restoring bilateral ties and prepare further high-level exchanges ahead of November's APEC summit in Shenzhen. And now for more on Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit, we're joined today by Professor Daniel Connolly, Associate Professor of International Relations at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Connolly, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So many analysts expect South Korean officials to ask the Chinese foreign minister to play a more constructive role in bringing North Korea back to dialogue. How do you think the talks will play out?
Well, on the surface, there's been some really positive momentum in the development of Chinese and South Korean ties. The leaders met in APEC, they met again in Beijing in January, and just on August 15th, President Xi sent a congratulatory message to President Lee, emphasizing the importance of the bilateral relationships. But I do think it's important to have some modest expectations about the talks. What we're seeing here is kind of a restoration of Chinese-South Korean ties. The kind of THAAD controversy is still looming over this relationship. So I don't expect to see a fundamental breakthrough. Structurally, the parties are still far apart. South Korea is committed to its trilateral relationship with Japan and the United States. And I think Chinese policymakers are aware of this, and they don't expect any change in South Korea's diplomatic trajectory. Conversely, I don't think China has any compelling reason to increase pressure on North Korea at this point. So I expect, modest steps, but no major breakthroughs.
I see. And bilateral issues between Seoul and Beijing also include China's ban on Korean entertainment and the issue of maritime structures in the West Sea. Do you think these issues could also come up in their talks?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I think, though, the fundamental problem in the Chinese-South Korean relationship is South Korea has a lot of asks for China, but doesn't really have a lot to give in exchange. So South Korea wants a relaxation on the ban on Korean entertainment. They want China to dismantle maritime structures in the West Sea. They want China's help to bring North Korea to the negotiating table. All of these things are very hard for China to do. And at the same time, South Korea is very much falling in line with the United States, following the chip restrictions against China, wanting to build military ships for the U.S. Navy. I think all of this is really making it hard. South Korea doesn't have anything to give in exchange for these concessions from China. So I expect maybe we may see some increased talk about person-to-person ties, people-to-people ties, but I don't think South Korean policymakers have a lot of maneuver room to really make concessions that are needed to get these major concessions from China.
And Wang Yi's visit comes as Trump says the United States will scale back joint military exercises with South Korea. The Wall Street Journal actually says Trump is pushing for talks with Kim Jong Un as early as this November. Do you think we could see talks between the United States and North Korea actually happen in the near future?
Right. Well, North Korean relations with the United States is always something very risky to make predictions about. But I am rather pessimistic. And I think there are several reasons why Trump is doing this, and they don't have much North Korea is not an important part of this reason. So first, he's exasperated with the war in Iran boiling over. So he's trying to maybe make an outreach to North Korea. This will look good for the midterms. This ability to make a deal is what Trump builds his whole persona on. Will North Korea do this? I'm a little skeptical, though.
I see it. But North Korea has remained silent about Trump's comments, and some say Pyongyang is in no hurry to return to these talks because it has now become more diplomatic. It has more diplomatic options. thanks to its closer ties with Russia and China. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. North Korea has a lot more options than it did in Trump's first administration. And this is going to make them, China, Russia are much more reliable options than these high-risk talks with the United States. And I think fundamentally, the problem is a lack of trust in President Trump. President Trump has alienated his own allies. He's unpredictable. He's very transactional. North Korea looks at the United States as a high-risk kind of diplomatic gambit. The U.S. does have a lot to offer, sanctions relief, economic kind of incentives, but Trump has his own domestic problems. Anything that Trump promises now ahead of the midterms may disappear after the midterm election. Mm-hmm. We see this pattern in the Iranian negotiations where the U.S. gives concessions and then takes those concessions away because a lot of people criticize it. So yes, I think North Korea has a lot of options, but they also aren't ready to embark on this kind of high-risk negotiation.
I see. All right, Professor Connolly, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the United States is not holding talks with Iran, despite earlier claims that negotiations were underway. The statement comes as tensions remain high over the Strait of Hormuz and efforts to reach a permanent end to the war. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington is not currently holding talks with Iran and has no plans to begin new negotiations, contradicting his earlier claims that the two sides had been in active discussions. In a Truth Social post Tuesday, Trump said there are no talks or conversations taking place or scheduled with Tehran. At the same time, Trump insisted that the U.S. naval blockade remains in effect and that the Strait of Hormuz is open and operating. He also said all water mines in the strategic waterway have either been removed or detonated. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has been severely disrupted since the war began, partly because of the threat posed by Iranian mines. The United States launched a mine-clearing operation in April in an effort to establish safe passage through the waterway. But Tehran disputes Trump's claims that the strait is fully open. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf said Tuesday that the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed until Washington meets conditions contained in an interim agreement reached in June.
And let me make it clear, until America implements its commitments under the Memorandum of Understanding, including lifting the blockade on the release of frozen assets, lifting the oil sanctions, ending threats and military operations on all fronts, and other conditions that America has agreed to under the understanding, the strait will not be reopened.
That agreement, signed on June 17th, was intended to end hostilities and create a path toward a broader settlement. But it quickly began to unravel over disagreements surrounding control of the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial shipping route that carried about 1/5 of global oil and liquefied natural gas supplies before the war. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also said Tehran will not accept another temporary ceasefire and is instead seeking a permanent end to the nearly 6-month conflict. Araghchi said Qatar and Pakistan have played important mediation roles, but stressed that contacts between Iran and the United States have not amounted to formal negotiations. The 60-day negotiating period proposed by Washington expired Monday without a permanent agreement. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back here in South Korea, the cabinet on Tuesday approved regulations laying out the structure and operations of the country's new Serious Crimes Investigations Agency, set to launch in October. According to the Interior Ministry, the agency will have nearly 3,000 personnel and investigate 7 categories of serious crimes, including corruption and economic crimes. Specialized units will be established nationwide, while separate units will handle supplementary investigations requested by prosecutors. The ministry said it will now move ahead with follow-up preparations, including appointing investigators and setting up facilities and necessary systems. South Korea is accelerating its push to become a global AI powerhouse, with major projects now taking shape across the country. And as AI moves beyond the digital world and into robots, factories, and everyday life, Korea is looking to turn its technological edge into real-world growth and competitiveness. Our Jo Young-eun reports.
Artificial intelligence is rapidly expanding beyond the success of individual models, with competition now extending across a broader ecosystem of semiconductors, AI data centers, and physical AI. As AI becomes increasingly tied to national competitiveness, the South Korean government has set its sights on becoming one of the world's top 3 AI powers. The broader strategy builds on Korea's existing strengths in semiconductors, telecommunications, and automobiles, while seeking to connect them with AI to create a new industrial ecosystem.
소재 부품 장비 등 산업 생태계 전반을 함께 지원할 방안, 그리고 나아가서 피지컬 AI의 발전이 제조, 인공지능 전환의 역량 강화로 이어지는 산업 대도약 전략이 반드시 필요합니다.
Last month, President Lee also held a series of meetings with global big tech leaders and unveiled the San Francisco AI Declaration, signaling the ambition to position Korea as an indispensable player in the global AI supply chain. Experts say securing a leading position in the global AI race means more than developments in technology and innovation.
The first is how well equipped Korea is with infrastructure such as data centers. Then AI models are built on top of that, followed by data, and then the broader adoption of AI across industries to build industrial competitiveness. With all 4 of these elements, Korea can be considered competitive.
The expansion of AI infrastructure is also closely tied to talent, making advanced computing and research infrastructure essential to retaining domestic AI talent and creating the foundation for further growth. The goal is to turn these investments into stronger industries and ultimately greater export competitiveness. As Korea already has a strong competitive edge in manufacturing, experts say integrating AI into industries where Korea has established expertise could provide a more practical path towards strengthening its position in the global market.
In the short term, securing industrial competitiveness is what matters. Even at the current level, Korea can build competitiveness by taking a full stack approach. There should be a focus on areas that the country is already good at, such as manufacturing, and find ways to integrate AI into those industries and turn that into exports.
As AI rapidly reshapes industries around the world, Korea's challenge is to move beyond developing individual technologies and build an ecosystem that connects infrastructure, talent, and industry, turning its AI ambitions into tangible industrial competitiveness. Jo Young-eun, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham brushed off warnings from Moscow on Tuesday and said that Britain will back Ukraine 100%. Burnham said that Britain will stand by Ukraine, quote, in its hour of need and won't change. This comes after the Russian embassy in London said that Britain's actions will inevitably carry consequences for which it will have to answer. Russia's warning followed a report in the Times newspaper on Saturday that British-made drones had been used for long-range strikes inside Russia for the first time. The UK Ministry of Defence has not confirmed whether British drones were used. Back in June, London said it would supply 150,000 drones to Ukraine by the end of 2026. In the Philippines, a high school student shot and killed a classmate before taking his own life. Officials say he live-streamed part of the attack using a body-worn camera. Police said the student walked into the high school building on the Ateneo de Zamboanga campus on Tuesday with 2 pistols. He fired at a teacher and missed, then shot and killed the student before killing himself. 2 others were hurt and hundreds of students were evacuated. The Interior Secretary said on Tuesday that the student streamed part of the attack on Facebook Live. One of the pistols belonged to his father, a customs police commander who may face administrative charges. In Spain, 3 more earthquakes on Tuesday shook the southern province of Granada. Each one measured above magnitude 4. At least 3 people were lightly injured, and one of them, a minor, was taken to the hospital. Authorities restricted tourist access to parts of Alhambra, the medieval palace fortress above the city. The province closed museums, sports facilities, and administrative buildings. Some residential buildings were left with large cracks in their walls. The tremors follow a magnitude 5 quake that hit Granada on Saturday. In the United States, Frank Beard, the drummer for the blues rock band ZZ Top, has died at the age of 77. The band said he died on Monday in hospice care at his ranch in Texas with family at his side. The cause of death was not specified. Beard played with ZZ Top for 6 decades. The band formed in 1969 and released 15 studio albums, with hits like Gimme All Your Lovin'. ZZ Top called off 2 shows this week, but planned to be back on stage over the weekend in Austin, Texas, at one of Frank's favorite venues.
The strong rain clouds have moved away and warmer weather is quickly returning. Most regions of the country are now under heat wave advisories, while scattered showers continue to develop. And overnight heat has also returned to near tropical night levels, with afternoon temperatures set to hover around 33 degrees Celsius in most parts of Korea. Meanwhile, the Jeollado provinces will continue to see rain through the morning, with up to 40 millimeters expected. Then there will be sudden showers later today, with 5 to 60 millimeters expected, possibly with thunderstorms. Now, the amount of rain will vary depending on where you are, so be sure to keep an umbrella handy. Afternoon highs will be similar to yesterday in most parts of Korea, with a high of 32 degrees Celsius here in the capital and Daegu, Busan, while Chuncheon, Gyeongju, Daejeon, Gwangju will be getting up to 33 degrees Celsius. But feels like temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher along with that high humidity. Then another round of rain is on the way. Rain will begin across central Korea from Friday evening and continue into Saturday morning. So for now, it's a combination of heat, humidity, and scattered showers.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.